Hi, and welcome to BAME On The Move. Today we present the Leadership Ladder podcast. We're privileged today to be joined by our special guest, Carmen Morris. Carmen is the founder of Kenroi Consulting, and her company delivers diversity and inclusion solutions to leading public and private sector organizations. And when she's not busy making a change and a positive impact in the corporate world, she's also a regular contributor to Forbes magazine, and has some really good articles that have been published in that space. So, hello, Carmen, and happy Jamaican Independence Day.
Yeah, and the very same to you, Roy. Thanks for having me.
I think just to start off, just to give our viewers a bit of an insight into you and what you're about and Kenroi Consultancy, could I just ask you just to explain a little bit about yourself, your work life, and how you ended up moving into starting your own D&I consultancy practice?
Okay, I've been involved in diversity and inclusion for about 25 years, a little over 25 years now. It's what I've done for all of my career, working across public, private sector organizations. We've recently expanded now to taking on some international clients, which is why I need to be off this at 8:30 to take a call from clients in California. I've always had an interest in diversity and inclusion. This isn't something that I've just got into overnight or thought that, oh, I'll have a go at that. It's something that's been a career-wide focus for me. I've always
inspired you though? So you say you into it.
What inspired me was my interest in sociology. I have a social science degree. I am a Black woman, and I've always been very cognizant of the challenges that Black people face within society and in the workplace. So it's always been an interest of mine. And I followed that up through education and went straight into diversity and inclusion roles.
Okay.
So I started off at race equality councils and then quite quickly went into consulting. I've worked for some large public sector organizations also, and just ended up starting Kenroi Consulting because I thought it was time for me to move out onto my own.
Okay. Oh, I would imagine you've seen quite a few changes in that space. So if you were to kind of do a bit of a comparison to the early starting of your career and to now, what do you think about the space that D&I has in society and in the corporate world now compared to how it was when you were just getting your foothold?
When I first started out, it was very much, well, we're all right here. No one's racist, no one's homophobic, no one's sexist, etc., etc. I think throughout the late 90s into early 2000s, there was an increased focus around diversity and inclusion post the Stephen Lawrence case, which we all know very well. So there was an increase in focus there. I think that public sector organizations have done more than private sector organizations. But I'd go as far as saying that clearly it hasn't been enough when we look at race and race equality. The diversity and inclusion agenda has very much been hijacked by gender, disability, and LGBT. There hasn't been the focus on race that there should have been in the past. I think now, following George Floyd's murder, and people coming out giving statements, etc., etc., there is an increased focus on it. But I do ponder sometimes about the authenticity of the focus.
Yeah, I'll be interested to unpack that. But before we go into what companies are doing and how the corporate world has responded to the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it'll be interesting to hear about D&I experts, and because it seems to me that it's become quite popular as far as people self-proclaiming themselves as D&I experts. I can imagine it's good that there's the enthusiasm, but I can imagine that it has its own shortcomings in terms of diluting the work that you do, and in some instances maybe being to the detriment of what you're actually trying to achieve. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, it is an increasing problem. I have had many people wanting to connect with me on LinkedIn from the HR space, who have never written anything about diversity and inclusion, and all of a sudden have become diversity and inclusion experts. When someone wants to connect with me, I do look at their profile, and I do look at the conversations that they've been having increasingly over time, particularly when they come from an HR background. I think for viewers that are regular on LinkedIn, you will have seen that the gender space has become a lot more quiet recently, and the race space has been elevated. However, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, and obviously the murder of George Floyd, and the worldwide global conversations around race at the moment, a lot of those people have moved into the race space, if you like. The problem with that is you can't be an expert in everything. And in the normal days, or the usual days, about 3 months ago, they were saying nothing about race.
Yes.
So that is a clear indication to me of people wanting to jump on the bandwagon of race, because it is of the moment, and it has a very globalized focus. I think it's disingenuous, and I question the motivation behind it.
Yeah, I think it feels like there's a bit of a bandwagon in that.
Absolutely.
People are trying to be self-proclaimed experts.
Absolutely.
And it's people that, so in certain instances, people that might not understand the struggle, might not fully understand the policy and procedures that have gone into the Racial Equality Act, and they don't actually have solutions for other people. They're just, in a way, trying to fake it until they make it.
Absolutely. And I think within this space, it is not that somebody who is not Black cannot be very cognizant around race and racial matters. However, one must be able to understand the complexities of race and the intersectionality around race and race issues, the historical factors, to be able to present themselves as a consultant. You cannot go into an organization and just say, well, let's all be nice to Black people, or deliver some kind of fluffy solution to your client. What is necessary is that you go in and you unpick the organization, and you have the ability to assess how race and race equality can be inputted into all the policies, the functions, and the processes of that organization, and how these strategic changes can help to reduce inequalities. This is not all about unconscious bias. Racism is not always unconscious. We need to start looking at the structures of the functions of organizations that allow racism, and we'll call it what it is, allow racism to reiterate itself throughout the careers of Black employees.
Yeah, but I truly support that point. I think your previous point with regards to sometimes race being dodged on the D&I agenda and other initiatives favoring it. So say, for example, a company might focus on getting awards for LGBT or female empowerment, but avoid tackling race challenges. Why do you think that occurs? Is it simply because it's such a difficult beast to wrestle with?
Racism is very subtle in this country within the workplace. There are stories, actual facts of what happens in the police. However, within the average workplace, racism is very subtle. So the fact that LGBT and gender issues have been put on this pedestal for so long, and I'm not saying for one moment that there are not issues in relation to LGBT inequality and gender inequality. I've written on those subjects as well. But for the purposes of this interview, it's my belief that racism is rooted in power. If you see the top of the organization from one particular background, and there is a glass ceiling for women and what I call the concrete ceiling for people who are Black, then that in itself tells you something. Report after report has shown that even though there are things within the law, instruments within the law that mean that you must engage and recruit inclusively, it has failed to happen. Now, the average person will see that there is something wrong with that.
Can I just ask you to
wrong with that?
Can I ask you to unpack that statement about there being a difference between a glass ceiling and a concrete ceiling?
The glass ceiling is where you can see through it, but you will not get to it. The concrete ceiling is the one that, without the use of a jackhammer and some very heavy equipment, you know that you will never get through it. This is an issue that Black professionals have faced for many, many, many years. Some have been lucky enough to get through, but in terms of Black people's educational level and the fact that, as you know, and I know, Roy, that we have to work twice as hard to achieve the same level, we will only go so far. Organizations have taken to the one and done kind of process of having one woman or one Black person on the board. It's disingenuous. The murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Movement have kind of brought that in a very, very powerful way to the forefront. And now we have organizations, they make their statements and, you know, put a few people in their advertisements. I don't think we've ever seen, and I don't think it's a bad thing, but there are a lot of TV shows now discussing the issues and listening to the voices of Black people, and they are on prime time, which is a good thing. Roy, you and I remember when if you wanted to watch something about Black people on the TV, you had to sit there and wait until 11 or 12 o'clock at night to be able to watch that, because it was not seen as something that it's not important. So when everybody else has watched TV and gone to bed, the black people can watch their shows just before the TV signs off.
No prime time slot.
Absolutely. That is changing, and there's been a marked increase on shows discussing issues of concern to black people since the 25th of May. However, is it enough? We're discussing things that black people have been discussing for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And I think there should be a window for those discussions, and then we need to get down to action. And the focus has to be on black, because black has not had the focus that it should have had for many, many years. And this has stifled the careers of many, many generations of black people.
Yeah, I think you make a valid point with regards to companies delivering PR statements following the death of George Floyd. It seems though that in some instances, it's difficult to see what the company's going to do next. So you pay lip service, you sign up to a charter, and you say, "Yeah, we're going to make these changes," but the proof will always be in the pudding. If you can't walk into the boardroom and see a representation of black people in that space, then what are you trying to achieve beyond paying the cause lip service? I think what I'd like to understand a bit about is, what can these organizations do to affect real change? It's good that they're showing commitment, but what should the next steps be?
I think, the showing commitment, I don't know if that's 100% true, but we are doing our statements and we are doing our PR things around Black Lives Matter. I think the difference here is that the protests have been global in nature, and they have been supported by mainly young people of all different races. Whereas when I was in my 20s, let's say, protests were with Black people and the odd white people, the odd white person. If you look back to the protests of the 50s and the 60s, Martin Luther King protests that were here in the UK, you will see that they were majority Black, peppered with one or two white faces. This time it's been different. And I think that the horror that the world saw at the murder of George Floyd, live and in living color, and that can go back to the famous saying of the revolution will be televised. And that woke up a lot of people all around the world. Organizations now are having conversations. That's fine. I think the protests hit a lot of organizational leaders like a rabbit in the headlights, and I think they're still reeling from shock.
Yeah.
However, there comes a time when you have to look at this strategically. So the statements have been made, all the PR things have been done, people have gone to their websites, they've put a couple of Black faces here and there, but when you look at the leadership of the organization on their website, you still see that they are largely white.
Yes.
Additionally, and it is a good and a bad thing, organizations have taken to, and this was a theme of one of my recent posts on Forbes, using Black employees as the elixir to the Black Lives Matter protest, to present their organizations as being very focused on race, etc., etc. The problem here is that your Black employees who have been with you for 1, 3, 7, 10 years see this. My question is, what have organizations done to support Black employees because of the Black Lives Matter protests and the murder of George Floyd? We got coronavirus, was it in March? Coronavirus took over the whole world, as it were, and lots of things were put in place. Do organizations understand that if you have Black employees, and obviously they have been affected by the murder of George Floyd, perhaps it's not the best thing to do to grab hold of all your Black staff and say, we support you, come and do some work. You employ your staff, Black, white, or other, to do a day job, not to fix something that is a leadership problem and needs to be done strategically by leadership.
Yeah. I remember that article you mentioned employee resource groups, and it'll be helpful just to maybe unpack that term a little bit and just talk about the challenges that they face, i.e. being underfunded and under-resourced.
I think employee resource groups are very, very useful. They are groups of people who are maybe from a particular background, a social background, gender background, LGBT, Black, Asian, minority, and they have a wealth of information to support leadership through their own lived experience and their own personal knowledge of the impact of organizational behavior and structural racism as they see it. However, it is disingenuous for organizations, leadership within organization to, in inverted commas, put upon these individuals to fix a problem. Employee resource groups are there. I've spoken to many employee resource groups over the years. They are not funded, or they are severely underfunded. As we spoke earlier, the race agenda has been severely marginalized over the year. You know, let's do something for Black History Month or something. Black history is made every single day. We have Black workers within organizations who have been challenging racism, structural racism, for many, many years and are not funded to do so. So the fact that employee resource groups are being dusted off now and that we are working with our Black staff and this, that, and the other. Organizational leadership needs to be very aware that these groups are aware of what is happening. They have provided very little or no support for these members of staff in terms of the shock and the personal feelings that they would have encountered looking at the video of that murder. No support has been provided for them, as was provided when, coronavirus, let's do all this kind of stuff. Black Lives Matter, Black employees come in, we need to talk to you.
Yeah.
So I am experienced in going into organizations, and I can unpick things very quickly within this space. So there will be a time, and there is a value add for employee resource groups, but they must be funded.
Yes.
And they must be funded properly, just like anything that an organization does at this moment of time must be funded. HR cannot do it.
Yeah.
Leadership cannot do it. If they wanted to do it, it would have been done 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And I think that organizational leaders who are standing up at the moment and saying, yes, Black lives do matter and we are going to do something, need to have that in the back of their mind. You cannot use your staff to fix what is a leadership problem.
Yeah, that's the key point.
Project management. It is going to take learning for the organization. It is going to take a strategic plan. It is going to take budget. It is going to take resources, and it is going to take time.
Yes.
If an organization is not willing to do that, then I would question how legitimate they are about actually fixing these institutional issues.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of good intentions at the moment. I do take your point about being a bit dubious when it comes to the term commitment.
Oh, yes. Commitment is always a problem. Now, I can get up and say I'm committed to a million things, and that's wonderful. I can get up and make a statement. I can be committed to anything. But my commitment will always show via my actions.
Yes. Yes. No,
and if my actions do not support my rhetoric of commitment, then there's an issue there. There's an issue there. And we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. We've seen all the statements on LinkedIn. We've heard all the statements on podcasts. We've seen all the videos of organizational leaders. And now we are waiting to see what will happen in terms of actual results and actual strategies, policies, recruitment and retention activities. That's what we want to see now.
Yeah.
Talk is cheap, and we've been talking for a long time. The difference here is that companies have run scared because the world has said this needs to stop. Everyone's come out with their statements, which is wonderful, and there is some very, very valid commitment there. I have spoken to quite a few clients at the moment, and quite a few prospective clients at the moment as well, who are committed. But let's not forget that when you say these things to those who have suffered, they know your level of commitment, whether you realize it or not.
I think another thing is sometimes, although you might have a racial equality policy, you might not have a clear metrics or barometer for success. So there's the basic, all right, we're going to sponsor a percentage of staff within our organization so that they can shadow people in leadership positions. But in terms of monitoring and reporting on your success, how many of these individuals were successful in terms of getting promotions? What are your statistics like in terms of talent attraction? These things, although we can have lots of talks and show a lot of positive energy in terms of transformation, we need to see tangible. We need to see tangible outputs. We need to be able to monitor, track, and trace the initiatives that you say that you're implementing, so that when we look at an organization a year from now, a year from the BLM movement, or just a year generally, you can say, all right, this is the amount of funding that we've given to our employee resource group. These are the things that they were able to do. These are the employees that have progressed up through the organization. This is how our talent acquisition statistics have improved in the BAME space or the black space. I
And
think
all
there's quite a lot when it comes to
what gets measured gets done. And who is overseeing all of this? This is where things become a tick box exercise. Okay, we're going to sponsor X amount of black staff, and black staff say, oh, that's great, I'm going to go on that program. But because of the systemic nature of things, we can tick the box to say that, yes, we have done this, we have put this program on to support our black staff. But you were never going to get through anyway because of that concrete ceiling. So it has to be a root and branch analysis of the organization to see where those blocks are and remove the blocks. You simply cannot say, when there are so many young, bright, educated, highly educated black individuals coming out of universities and black staff that have been there for a long time, you simply cannot say that you cannot find black people to sit in these positions. I was recently contacted on LinkedIn because of my expertise in race and diversity to become a non-exec for an organization. And I spoke to the individual. It was a free position. In other words, it wasn't chargeable. There would be no pay for it. And I said, quite simply, why do you think that I would sit as a non-exec on your board with my level of experience to give you my experience for free? Is that what you would do with a white non-exec? Or are you trying to tick a box with me? The conversation was swiftly ended, and on his way he went.
yes.
These are some of the ways that organizations, and I have to call it what it is, try to use black people to tick these boxes.
Yeah.
These are some of the ways that, and we all know from personal experience, that we work twice as hard, but then it is, I don't know, Sally from HR or, I don't know, Derek from finance that gets the promotion on the back of your work. I think there are very, very few black people, professionals, and, you know, I know a whole lot of them, as do you, Roy, that have experienced that. We are not for donkey work. We add a lot of value to organizations. Organizational leadership knows this. So now it is time to level the playing field and not just tick the box, and let the world see what you are capable of.
Yeah, I've actually seen that with colleagues. So I remember working for a central government organization a couple of years ago. I'm a contractor, so as you know, I move around quite a lot.
Yes.
But one of the senior members of staff there went through the government's commercial leadership program and done very well, and even a few other people to pass as well.
Yes.
When the opportunity came for them to go for a senior position, like an A-star grade position, the deputy director that they were working with at the time said, "Oh no, I just don't think you're ready. I just don't think you've got the right skill set." So they never even got an opportunity to get to interview stage. So rather than getting angry and making their work suffer as a result of their discontentment, what they decided to do was look outside of the government department that they were working in. And they went for a job and they got it. And now they're doing very well. And that was the first job that they went for after achieving that qualification. But their line manager, who had seen them go through the work seen them tutor other individuals, had been privy to what they've been delivering in terms of programs of work, didn't have the faith and belief to even allow them to be shortlisted for interview within the organization that they've been working in for a number of years. So they had to jump ship, so to speak. So that's a valid point. So a lot of the time, although there might be these sponsorship initiatives in place, staff from BAME or black backgrounds can be quite dubious about whether or not they even want to go through the rigmarole of signing up, because they think once they go through it, they still won't have an opportunity to achieve their goals anyway. Yeah, that's a valid point there.
Yeah, so it's the disingenuous nature of some of these programs that are put in place that, on the face of it, look like very good programs, but they are tick box exercises, and we know that. So, I mean, I would say to organizations now who have just had an epiphany and who are going to do all these things because now Black Lives Matter, to take heed of that message. We know what you are doing.
All right, so Carmen, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question on that point. So, I know a large organization or corporation said, all right, yes, we sign up to the Sunday Times Charter for racial equality, and we're going to do everything we can in order to make sure that it's a level playing field and we promote and attract black talent. What they've made that statement. What would you say is the top 3 to 5 things that they should be doing in order to realize that objective, rather than just paying it lip service?
So, for organizations that are saying that they want to recruit black talent.
Yes.
You're asking? Okay, so if you want to recruit black talent, there is a lot of black talent out there. A lot of black talent. Organizations know this, but because of the, particularly the organizations that have black staff, they are very, very aware of the talent that their black staff have. It's just that the structure doesn't let them progress within that organization, but they're very aware. That's why those black staff were hired. They are aware of the qualifications that black people have. They are aware that we are very hardworking. However, it's just simply a fact that once you get into these organizations, because of the organizational mindset, you are not going to be allowed to progress. On the recruitment side, we can't find black staff within this industry. Open the door. Open the door. There are industries that there are not many black people working in. Open the door to them. Attract them. That is your job. So you attract them. Where are black people? How do we find them? Where do we recruit them from? Do we put an ad in the Times newspaper? Or do we put an ad in the newspapers that black people will read? I read the Times from time to time, but I also read the Telegraph. I read black press. Why aren't you engaging with black press and black media? You claim you want black people. And this is a problem for recruitment, the recruitment industry as a whole. A lot of organizations go to recruitment firms, the big executive recruitment firms, and say, find me someone to do this. And that recruitment agency goes to their database, which doesn't have any black people in there. So who is at fault? Is it the recruitment industry or agency, or is it the organization? But why isn't the organization checking through their procurement process the types of candidates that these recruitment agencies are who they have on their database? Do you have a wide mix of cultural and racial backgrounds? Where are you going to find someone from? The recruitment industry has a lot to answer for. And basically what happens is that the status quo is maintained because they call up the recruitment agency and they send them what they sent them last time and the time before and the time before. Who is measuring and monitoring in terms of their recruitment? The recruitment industry is about making money, placing candidates and getting that commission. But they should be tasked to find a wide range of candidates to put in front of an employee.
Yeah, that's an excellent.
Black people do have the skills, do have the experience when they are allowed to get it, which is my next point, to do these roles. Now, in terms of organizations, if you are not allowing Black staff to actually get the experience for these roles, why is that? Had the playing field been level, then you would have them at your disposal. But if they cannot get that experience because of the concrete ceiling, then we have a problem. And this is the systemic nature of racism. And these are just a few examples of how Black employees can be held back and refused access to very fulfilling careers. This does not happen by accident.
Yeah, I'm all about creating solutions and finding ways to navigate this treacherous landscape. It's not always treacherous, but I think it's fair to say that I've encountered challenges that I know some of my counterparts just have no experience of. So what would your advice be to a ambitious individual that's aiming to climb up the career ladder or aiming to make the most of this situation? They've got skills, they've got abilities, they've been disenchanted for some time, but now that there's a wave of interest in trying to ensure there's equality, maybe they might see this as an opportunity for them to realize their full potential. So what would your advice be to that professional individual trying to rise to the top?
Go for it. In 3 words, go for it. This is your moment. If you feel you've been held back, if you can speak to your manager or your leadership about structural inequalities within the workplace that have held you back, then do so. Call it out. Wherever you see it, call it out.
Yeah.
And this is a moment where, as you've seen, I mean, I've been doing it for many, many years, but it has given a strength to Black employees that they shouldn't underestimate. Now is the time to go to your employers and demand what, through the instruments of law, is rightfully yours. Call it out where you see it and talk it out. Because at this moment, it's all about talking.
Yeah.
All leaders want to do is talk. So talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Call it out where you see it.
You know, it could be quite daunting to actually call it out when you see it, especially in situations where it's like microaggression. I remember a fair few years ago now, I was working for a private sector organization, and I was just in the kitchen, just trying to mind my own business, making a sandwich, and Liam Neeson, the actor, came up on the TV because at that time he had said that when someone in his family had been abused, he wanted to go out and kill the first black person he saw. So he was on the TV and they were talking about it.
Mhm.
And there were some white colleagues in the kitchen working with me. One of them I knew, not very well, but I knew, and another one that I didn't. And while I was there, they weren't speaking to me. One of them said to the other one, he started laughing to himself. He's like, did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? And then the other guy that he was speaking to, he turned over to him and he said, I want to kill a black man. This is the conversation that they're having within my earshot.
Mhm.
And then I look at them, and it's such a microaggression, because obviously I'm one of the few black people in the office,
Mhm.
but they're having that type of conversation and making it a jovial topic. I just said, yeah, he's always in action films. Killing people must be his first thought. That was the only thing I could come up with.
Yeah.
And in that instance, when in an instant you keep revisiting what you said and thinking, I should have said this, I should have stamped it out, I should have done whatever. But it was such subtle microaggression. It was a difficult one to call out. And although I recorded it, nothing like that happened again while I was there. But I still kicked myself.
I think times have changed. Organizations claim they are listening. So I don't see an issue with now feeling empowered to ask the questions, because if your leadership has said that they are listening and that Black lives do indeed matter, then I think that these issues of microaggression would be something that they would like to hear about, don't you? There are conversations going on all over social media, in Black groups, in organizational groups, in HR forums about these very matters. So use this opportunity to speak with your leaders who have told you through their PR statements, etc., etc. Tell them what's happening, and let's see what they do.
Even the microscopic slights, because those people need education.
They have, in the main,
and accountability,
called on their Black workers groups and their employee resource groups to support them with the necessary changes that have been caused by these global protests. So if you don't want to tell them, take it to your employee resource group, who will tell them. Because they have said quite clearly that they are willing. We have more work to do. There's much more to do. We are sorry for this. We are going to change, etc., etc. They've said this and they've said that publicly. There shouldn't be an issue with you going and telling them that I've actually seen this within this organization. And now that we are a learning organization and you are the leadership or you are my boss, then I'm bringing this to you, and I expect that you would do something so that it cannot develop or be reinforced systematically within this organization. And I'm sure that leadership would be able to support you with that, Roy, don't you?
Yeah,
they will.
Yeah, in these instances, I think as an isolated incident that happened at an organization that I was at for a short time, I was a contractor there, and I thought, all right, they said something, I responded, and it was so borderline that I thought, you know what, let me just take note of it and see if something like that happens again, and then if it does, I'm going to stamp it out. But looking back, I think I would have liked to have addressed it more head on and made sure that individual had an understanding of how that comment made me feel, both of those individuals.
But this is the subtle nature of microaggression.
Yes.
You go to a football match, people just tell you to your face.
Yeah.
In the workplace, we're far more cultured than that.
Yes.
We're far more subtle than that. And these are one of the big issues that have come up and that people are talking about. the microaggressive nature of racism.
Yes. I would say, though, on the flip side, and what I've found in this current climate is that people that are in leadership positions are a lot more open to showing you the blueprint as to how they got there. So regardless of what their race is, it seems as though there's a bit of a culture at the moment in terms of each one teach one, and people being more open to let people be exposed to spaces that they might not been able to occupy before. So I'd say my advice would be to know what's going on with your organization. I.e., if there's a board meeting that happens every fortnight, or there's program meetings, or there are new initiatives that are being rolled out within your company, know what they are, ask if you can be involved, ask if you can shadow, so that you can get that exposure, because it seems like the doors slowly starting to become more and more ajar. And especially if your organization is one of those organizations that has publicly made a pledge, then as an employee, you can take control of your own destiny. You can remind that organization of what they've said they will do, and try and create opportunities for yourself to help them achieve that objective.
Yes. I mean, I think, to be fair, there are some in leadership that have absolutely been horrified about what has happened. But it is now for organizations to put on an introspective lens and ask themselves the questions. We are an all-white leadership. Why is that? And ask uncomfortable questions of themselves. And that is, learning is not always easy. You've got to ask yourself the questions, because within the questions, you will find the answers. Sometimes it's not about knowing the answer, it's about knowing the right questions to ask. And if we are open and willing to have these difficult discussions around race, I think we'll go a lot further. And what the data tells us, we must act on. Because if not now, Roy, when? If not now, when?
Definitely. I think just kind of as a concluding question, where do you see D&I next year? So at the moment, there's a lot of focus on equality. Do you think that it's going to materialize into real change within the next year? And what do you think those changes will be?
I think there are a lot of companies, many of whom has never really had a focus on race, much less diversity and inclusion, that have come forward and said, well, look, we need to understand what this is all about, because we don't. We are white men, we are white women, we cannot speak on behalf of or for Black employees. And there are a lot of companies now who are genuine in their will to commit to Black lives, diversity and inclusion, and all lives, for the benefit that they will reap within the workplace. You're not going to get anywhere if a percentage of your staff is not allowed to prosper within the organization. You're actually stifling yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Carmen, I thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I would encourage anyone that watches this to follow you on LinkedIn and to look out for your articles on Forbes. Is there anything that we can look forward to within the next month or so in terms of your publishing?
There's always something to look forward to. The Forbes, if you just Google Carmen Morris Forbes, the page will come up, but it is www.forbes.com/sites, SITES /Carmen Morris /. That will take you directly to the page on Forbes. I also have a website blog. My website is www.kenroi, that's KENROI.com.
Thank you, Carmen. Once
You're
again,
welcome.
enjoy the rest of your Jamaican Independence Day, as will I.
Here we are with
Having you as a guest.
58 years independence today.
Couldn't have picked a better day to have you on the show. Thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much, Roy.
All right, Tara, see ya.
Thank you. Bye.